Diane King Hall live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Joining me now to discuss Disney's latest results in the state of streaming, we have Seth Schachner, Managing Director of Strat Americas. Seth, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's always great to hear your perspective on Disney and beyond. I got to frame the question this way because it was a mixed bag here. Shares are being dinged this morning. Is there still magic in the Mouse House?
Yeah, good morning, Diane. Great to be here. Absolutely. I looked at the report just off the wire, and I don't see anything, tremendously different from how, firstly, Hollywood studios, which I still view as the core of Disney, operate. Sometimes you have some weak quarter-to-quarter comparisons. Pretty surprisingly nice uptick, 8%, I think, in streaming numbers. They're doing a lot of great stuff inside of kind of the content side of their business with streaming, bringing Hulu out internationally. I think there's going to be some cool plans to kind of make the interface a little more sleek and user-friendly and, integrating everything from ESPN and Hulu in it. And there's, the theatrical releasing slate, which I think people are being a little bit reactive to today because I don't think Hollywood studios are ever particularly great looking quarter to quarter. It's a creative business. It's a little off compared to last year compared to some of the, the theatrical releases, but there's an Avatar that's coming and there's a big new franchise they found later this year. So that with the park stuff that they're doing, a new CEO, yes, would be my answer to your question.
So let me ask you this, though. One of the other challenges or headache for Disney right now is the fact that it is dark on YouTube TV as they continue to fight over essentially money, a new agreement here. And, I've seen reports from analysts saying that this costs Disney $30 million a week. What's your take on how damaging that is to Disney?
That's a really serious thing to me. I mean, I don't know damaging wise on the stock. I think it's probably, to me, incremental. It's a tiny little fleck in the Google universe. But this, Diane, this is like oldest story in the book, the fight between distributor and content regulator and content owner. Where everyone would hate the cable company, when sports is off it. But I think what's happening here, I think for the first time, you may see a little bit of a shift in power dynamics. There's a good question whether or not, Disney needs YouTube TV or more than Google does. And I think, I don't know, it'll be the same day, the way it was in the old days where Disney just gets the price increases that it really wants to see. So I think it's a serious question. But look, Disney's got everything under the sun from their own networks, their own apps, to even to some of the pay TV relationships. So I don't think it's a catastrophic development, but it's certainly interesting if you're looking at power dynamics.
Okay, so I want to go back to the point you were making about, there is still magic in the Mouse House. I mean, streaming, there is some strength in streaming. That's obviously considered partly a big part of the future of Disney. But linear held back some of the, I guess, overall growth. How do you see Disney when you look at kind of the broader, even streaming landscape, when you compare it to pure play, for instance, like a Netflix?
Yeah, I see it very, very positively, Diane, because look, there's a landscape of streaming services out there, and most of them are out trying to merge or buy other properties or figure out ways to either shut down or retool what they're doing. Not this one. Disney's kind of on par with Netflix. To me, it's Netflix, Disney, maybe Prime, and then everyone else. And so, I think what you'll notice with Disney, they're not out trying to buy other, assets, other networks, other libraries right now. They have enough, Iger and the team have assembled enough content in there over the last decade or so to make it work. So I still see it, very positively. I think, there are verticals like sports, which are kind of question marks. If the standalone ESPN app they just recently launched is going to be successful, or if you're going to see continued pressure, from the tech titans buying up some of these sports rights. So I think there's more of a push and pull like within verticals like sports than there is on the broader picture. I mean, but I still see it very, very positively as the biggest player in the market. And to me, it's still a model if you're a Hollywood studio for how to do it. And you just got to look on the other side of the hill with what Ellison and Paramount are likely going to do with Warner Brothers. They kind of want to get to the same level where Disney is right now in terms of streaming and all those assets.
When you look out over the next year or so, say 12 months or so, what trends are you watching for in this space? Is it about bundling? Is it about the ad-supported tiers? What do you think is going to be kind of the biggest drivers within streaming and that could potentially impact Disney?
Streaming is all about, getting to scale. So how big can you get? Meaning a consumer has to have that property basically. And then how do you manage your costs and your programs? And whether that's whittling it down or setting up release slates for it, kind of calibrating what your offering is. And I think they're in a much more solid position than say two other studios are right now that look like they're going to try and merge the whole thing. So I also think on the advertising side, Disney strategically is not selling off its TV assets the way NBC is or Warner Brothers talking about into some of these spin-off companies. And I think it's in part because they believe in this idea that you got to have scale, even with some declining businesses in it. And, look, they've got some brands that go everywhere across all their properties. Their ad sales team can probably monetize it, whether it's pay TV or streaming or any other platform. So, I see on this side of their business, which isn't the only reason why I see it's a lot of magic. There's another big piece of it as well. I think it's an extremely solid story.
Seth, let me ask you this. I want to go back to the point you made about costs. Disney's guidance for Q1 includes about $375 million in streaming operating income, right? But at the same time, it comes with these heavier expenses around the theatrical releases, sports rights, et cetera. How should Disney balance that growth investment versus discipline around costs?
Well, look, even since, I first came out of business school 30 years ago and wanted to work at Disney like every fellow MBA does, this is a machine that's got the smartest strategy people that are in it, the smartest cost people in it. They've always been, a very cost-centric company, even with all the things they've bought over the years. So I've never seen it as a wanton, excessive spending company. I think in the creative business, the creative cycles, you're going to see, things like they announced today with Avatar and spending on things like Jim Cameron's, expenses that are coming in. That's normal for a Hollywood studio. So I don't think they're out of balance. I think they'll always balance that piece of it out. I do think, there's a question for these companies in terms of how much you spend on streaming or on theatrical products and the amount of output you need, basically. Some people have seen when these mergers happen, for example, studios are making less pictures or they're doing it because Netflix is rolling out so much stuff. And I think that's probably if you're, running the Hollywood piece of it, you do want to be looking at how much you release as a studio. It's probably a smaller number, and maybe you acquire a certain number as well. But those big tent poles for companies like Disney, whether that's Avatar, Lilo and Stitch, are always going to be part of the bloodstream. They always need those to be happening, and those are several $100 million hits in terms of the capital spending for what they call the negative cost to get that picture to market. So it's always a piece of it.
And I know Avatar gets people going into theaters to see that one. All right, Seth, we'll leave our conversation there. That is Seth Schachtner, Managing Director, Strat Americas, with a look across Disney and streaming and beyond. Shares of Disney right now lower at 5% in the pre-market.